Hey guys, Danny Johnson here, and today we're going to be changing the oil and the oil filter in our 2021 Toyota Tundra. It should be a similar process to the other Tundras, but just check your owner-operator manual or other things just to make sure we don't miss anything, or in case it's a little bit different. You do want to run the vehicle a little bit, but then you'll want it to cool down so that the oil does not burn you. It will be really hot. So next we're going to pop the hood, and there's just the hood latch under here. We're going to push to the side and lift up. We'll be using this really cool kit from MotivTools. Check the video description. I'll put a link where you can pick this up. It was very high quality. I was very happy with it. Makes the job a lot easier. And then just some regular sockets and extensions. Next, take a 10mm socket, and we're going to take out the 3 screws that are in the front. So this is holding the actual bumper to the skid plate. These screws are going into a little plastic piece, and sometimes those little pieces pop out. So if it does, you can pop them back in. If not, replace them with new ones. It looks like they're not very strong, and using the screw itself can tear those up pretty good. Next, we're going to take a 12mm socket, and the skid plate will have a few holes in it where we can find some of these bolts. If you look at the skid plate from the side, you can make sure you're taking the right ones off here. And so as you can see, we're looking through here. The next one back in the middle is kind of towards the back of the skid plate, and then there's one on the far side. And then we also have 2 more of these bolt holes that are up front. So we'll go ahead and hold the skid plate slightly as we take out these last 2 on the front. Now the skid plate still will be held up by a few little tabs on here. So with the cover off, so I can show you what it looks like, there's some of these hooks that go sideways and some of them that go in towards the front of the bumper. So we got our sideways ones and our front ones. So the way that's best to take these off is basically scoot it slightly forward and drop it down. And it's kind of a combination of the two to get it to come off of the beam in there. Next, we want to remove the engine oil cap. That will help the oil drain. And so we'll go ahead and remove this out of the way. Now from underneath the vehicle, we're going to come down here and we're going to go in towards the back to find our oil pan. So the oil pan is this black one here. It runs almost lengthwise like this, and it has the drain plug on the far side. So the factory drain plug size for this one is a 14mm. So we're going to go ahead and take our socket here. Now remember, the oil is really hot, and we want to make sure that we are having our oil pan here in place and that the oil isn't going to splash everywhere. So break this loose going counterclockwise. When you're upside down and backwards, don't get confused. It needs to turn counterclockwise looking at the head of the bolt. Now as we go to spin this off, sometimes it's nice to use an extension, but if you plug it with your finger and then move it real quick, you can control this a little bit better. As it splashes out, it's going to go to the far side by the passenger wheel and then work its way back in. So make sure the oil pan is moved for that. With the drain plug off, we will want to remove the little washer that goes on here. Make sure it's not stuck to the oil pan. Sometimes they get left behind. We can put the drain plug back in momentarily and now go after our oil filter system. And so what we're going to do is take the end of the 3/8" socket that without a socket on it, just the wrench adapter or extension, and we're going to go ahead and break it loose, and this just spins off counterclockwise and it exposes these threads. So right now you're not going to have a lot of oil come out. You would put the factory tool up in here that comes with your new oil filter and push it sideways to release oil, but today we're using our new tool, and so we want to make sure it's unthreaded all the way on the red part before we thread this in. So we're going to go ahead and thread the top part in. And we're doing this by hand. It does not need to use a wrench. It doesn't have to be in very tight at all. So we're just threading the black portion into our oil filter housing. Once it's nice and tight, then we're going to go ahead and screw in the red part. So the red part is now going to be releasing a valve. So we want to make sure that that red part is not screwed in when we're putting it into the filter, and then we have to loosen it back up again when it's time to take this piece off. So we're going to go ahead and thread this in, and as you start to thread it, you'll see the oil start to drain down the tube. So as it drains, and you will get a significant amount, pretty much what the filter would hold, we're going to go ahead and have that drain into our oil drain pan. So we're going to go ahead and let this all drain into our oil catch pan here. And now when it comes time for the tool to remove it, we want to remove the red part first. So please make sure you don't forget this part, or you could damage it as you remove it. So the red part comes off first. Now we're unscrewing the black part out of the housing itself. Okay, next we're going to use this tool that goes over the oil filter itself, the oil filter housing. We're going to put our drain plug in momentarily. Do not forget that we still need to torque this down, but we're just moving our pan over in case there's any oil that comes out. This tool fit perfectly. I was very happy with the fitment of it. It slid right on. And so as you can see, you just put your ratchet up into the top of it with an extension. Now, I did have to use a breaker bar. Whoever did the last oil change on this put the filter on very tight. So it did break loose. And if you look, there is this little catch that's supposed to keep the oil filter from coming off on its own. So just make sure as you're removing this that you're watching that catch and it's not keeping the filter from stopping. You don't want to break that. So we're going to go ahead and remove the entire oil filter housing here. And so now the entire housing will come down with the filter still attached to it. And as you see, it did not make a very big mess because we pre-drained it, which was really nice. So we will use a Toyota factory filter for this. It comes with the O-rings and the little tool. It gives us a guide on the side of where the O-ring needs to go. So we'll go ahead and go through this now. So inside the box, we have our little tool that we did not use because of our different tool we were using in this video. Here's our two O-rings, the bigger one and a smaller one. And here's the filter itself. So we're going to go ahead and take our oil filter and just pull straight up on it to lift it off and set it aside. Now, before we put the new filter on, we're going to change out the O-ring. So you can see it right here. It's very apparent where it goes, but it can be confusing. So we're going to take a pick and we're going to go ahead and remove this off of it. And now we're going to bring in our new gasket, and we want to make sure it goes right back into that same line. So we're taking some old oil off of the old filter just to lubricate this a little bit. And so just kind of move it around with your fingers, but try not to twist or bend this O-ring. We want it to be not bound up or twisted in any way. So we're going to go ahead and fit this over the housing, and we're just going to gently stretch it until we get it back onto that notch where it came off of. So again, make sure you're not rolling it so that it gets bound up. We want it as straight as it can go. And so we're going to go ahead and put that on, and just make sure it is lightly lubed up. Now in the nose, there's another O-ring right here. So we're going to take our pick again, and we're just going to reach right in here and pop that one right out. Okay, so we're going to take our new smaller O-ring, and the same thing, we're going to slightly lubricate it just so it's not a dry seal, and then we're going to press it down into place, and it seems to sit pretty good in there. Now we can take our new filter and slide it right over the top. And you should notice a little spring action on here. Just make sure that it's been fully seated. Okay, from under the vehicle, we can just lift this right back up and start threading it back on. So on this, we want to make sure that it's threading by hand before we put the tool on it. And once we're sure that it's going in the right direction, now we can bring our tool in. And we want to be very careful with this. We don't want to over tighten it or break anything. So we just want to get it up there nice and snug and nice and firm, but not too tight. Next, we're going to put our cap back on, and so we want to make sure that it's threading evenly, and this we do not want to put on very tight. You don't want to damage it, and if you keep putting it on tight, it will start to move the entire housing. So we're just putting our little extension end in there and just getting it nice and snug. Next, we're going to take our drain plug. I even opted for a magnetic one. This one seemed pretty cool. And so it came with its own washer as well. So we want to make sure that we have our drain plug with our new washer. And this magnetic one should help if there's any small metal shavings to go through the engine. So we're going to go ahead and wipe off the oil pan, and we're going to put our drain plug back in. So this one does require a different size socket head since it's a different drain plug. But we're going to go ahead and put that in. And we're going to tighten this down to 20 foot-pounds, which comes out to about 240 inch-pounds. Okay, make sure everything looks good there. You can see the washers on there too, and that's nice and tight. Now we're going to work with our funnel, which came with the kit as well, which is really nice because if you look down, this will thread into where your factory oil cap threads. So that makes it really nice. So we thread that part in, then we thread the funnel on top, and it just makes it really nice to not spill on anything. We'll be using Toyota SAE 0W20 full synthetic motor oil, and we're going to do 8.5 quarts is what this calls for with a new filter. So that's a lot more oil than vehicles used to take. So just check your operator manual to make sure you're using the right amount. And so we're going to go ahead and add all 8.5 quarts to this one. What I like to do is pour in a quart and then just leave it sitting in here for a minute so it can continue to drain. And then we'll go ahead and put the second one and take our time here. So again, check your owner operator manual. In our case, 8.5 quarts is what it calls for. And if you buy 3 cases of 6, that's pretty much 2 exact oil changes, even with a quart left over. So it can be a good buy is how I decided to do it. When we're all said and done, we're going to go ahead and unthread this out and put our oil cap back on. And this is a good opportunity to now start the vehicle and make sure we don't have any leaks of any kind. So go ahead and start it. And we want to look at the oil filter itself to make sure that there's no leaks there, as well as over on the drain plug. And just make sure if we have it on too tight, it could be spraying oil, or too loose, it could be losing oil. Next, we're going to bring in our skid plate. And again, it goes up in, and then it's going to slide back onto the frame. So it's kind of a little hassle there, but we'll line everything else back up. It helps to put the bolts in loose. Don't tighten them all down yet, but we're going to do our 2 in the front and then our 3 in the back, and get it so that the skid plate is floating. If you tighten one down all the way, it's really hard to get the rest. So as you can see here, we have them just kind of in here and threaded and started, and then we can go back through and tighten them all up. Okay, so finally we'll end with our 3 10mm screws here. And again, if those little fittings are messed up, you could probably get replacement ones, but we're gonna go ahead and tighten them down. They don't need to go on very tight. You don't wanna strip it. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please check the video description. I have a whole playlist on this truck and other videos that I made that are similar. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. Thanks, guys.